Former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort is going to jail, something the president says is, quote, very unfair. Mr. Trump made those remarks in a tweet calling the Manafort decision tough and raising questions about former FBI Director James Comey and Hillary Clinton. Now, despite what the president said, Manafort has not been sentenced or convicted at this point. The president's tweet followed an impromptu Friday morning press conference where he took questions from reporters on everything from immigration to North Korea. He also said that Manafort, whose title at one point was campaign chairman, had very little to do with the campaign.
Paul Manafort worked for me for a very short period of time. He worked for Ronald Reagan. He worked for Bob Dole. He worked for John McCain, or his firm did. He worked for many other Republicans. He worked for me, for 49 days or something? A very short period of time. I feel badly for some people because they've gone back 12 years to find things about somebody, and I don't think it's right.
Joining me now from Boston is Michael Graham, CBSN political contributor, Boston Herald columnist, politics editor from nhjournal.com. How do you do it all? Michael, great to see you. We just heard this comment from the president responding to Manafort's jailing. He's trying to downplay the connection, obviously, but what do you think he's trying to accomplish in the face of the evidence about what Manafort was to his campaign, and is it working, whatever he's trying to do?
Well, who knows what Donald Trump is trying to do big picture. On the one hand, as is always the case with Trump, there's this nugget of truth. Paul Manafort was brought in for one task, and that was to get them through the convention. You know, there were talks of a floor challenge. In fact, I was at the convention. There was a little dust up of a semi-floor challenge, and the concern was because of the way that Trump won the nomination, where he never won a majority of the delegates out on the campaign trail, that there would be some effort to try to hold him, never won 50% of the popular vote, I should say, on the campaign trail. They would try to hold him under. So Manafort was brought in to do that. Manafort really is the kind of swamp creature that both parties have. Both parties rely on. He has worked for a bunch of people, but he's out in that part of the establishment that Trump's base never really supported. So on the one hand, they have no connection to him. On the other hand, there is fear that if Paul Manafort decided to cooperate with Robert Mueller's investigation because of all the pressure brought on these unrelated matters, that could cause a problem for the president. And so I mean, on the one hand, what the president said today was kind of muddy, talking about the mob, comparing him to the mob. On the other hand, at least he didn't say, Paul, I got your back. The pardon's sitting on my desk, which, of course, this president could do.
Well, his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, said something inching toward that. The president also talked about the Justice Department watchdog's big report on the FBI's handling of the investigations related to the 2016 campaign. Let's play a bit of that sound.
I think that the report yesterday, maybe more importantly than anything, it totally exonerates me. There was no collusion. There was no obstruction. And if you read the report, you'll see that. Here's the good news. I did nothing wrong. There was no collusion. There was no obstruction. The IG report yesterday went a long way to show that. And I think that the Mueller investigation has been totally discredited.
The report does not exonerate or even really touch on the president, but it did spark this partisan split about whether the report casts a shadow on the Mueller investigation. I'm curious what you thought about that.
Well, once again, President Trump is trying to conflate the two the same way that, to be honest, his opponents are trying to conflate Paul Manafort with collusion. Paul Manafort's case has nothing to do with collusion. He was a hack for Russia long before he met Trump and was involved in Ukraine, so that's separate. I think that there's a legitimate argument to be made that when you see the behavior of the FBI and the decision that I still don't understand to put the same people in charge of both the Hillary Clinton email investigation and the Russia investigation, and then you see decisions that were made, for example, slow walking Hillary Clinton's emails, but prioritizing Russia, that all feeds a story that Donald Trump wants people to think about, which is he didn't get fair treatment. And that, I think, is the strongest case. I think, we've already seen, support for the Mueller investigation, more people think that it's unfair than think it's fair, and that was before the IG report came out.
And you think this report gives that argument more traction?
I think when you read the comments from the people, once again, in charge of overseeing the two investigations, saying we're going to stop Trump from becoming president. We've got to be an insurance policy against the Trump presidency. There's comments describing Trump voters as, ignorant pieces of stuff who are counting on him to just give away jobs. It's hard to say this is the kind of just the facts, ma'am, investigatory behavior that we're looking. This was not CIS Washington. This was people who are very focused on politics when they should have been focused on justice.
Do you mean CSI? That's a CBS program. We want to get it right.
Excuse me. Thank you very much. I apologize.
Yes. Okay, you have a column coming up on Monday discussing one of the biggest, most important issues in American life, mistrust people have in big institutions. And at this point, it's almost every big institution. Corporations, the media, politicians, you name it. It's a big question, but I know you're going to try and answer it. How did we get to this point?
That to me is the interesting question. Gallup surveys our trust and confidence in institutions every year. They've been doing it for several decades. And according to them, we've been below the kind of traditional average since 2004. That's a long time before Trump showed up. And you look at the numbers, there was a time when George H.W. Bush, even setting aside the Gulf War kind of spike that he had, it was common for half of America to have confidence in the presidency. It's rare to see a president, even with President Obama, to bump above the low 30s. Confidence in Congress, this shocked me. In 1986, 40% or so of Americans said they thought they could be confident in Congress. Today, you're lucky if it's 4. I mean, it's fall off. And I believe that there are a couple of factors. One is the transparency of the media. We see so much more that's going on. We see the sausage being made. The FBI investigation, perfect example. In the past, we wouldn't have known what FBI agents thought about the people they're investigating because we didn't have texts and tweets, et cetera. And then I also think part of it is that oftentimes as a talk radio host, I will hear people in what is called the elites, academia, media, government, whatever, talking about my listeners in ways that are really disparaging. Really, in essence, kind of saying to them, you're a bunch of rubes. You don't know what's going on. Let us handle it for you. The world's too complicated. We'll fix it. Well, since the collapse of the economy and the Great Recession, watching the mess internationally the past 15 years, seeing problems like mass immigration and the impacts that it has, those people who spend all that time being insulted by their betters have been looking at the betters going, guys, you're just not doing that good of a job. It's one thing to tell me I'm stupid. Yeah, if you were better at being elites, I think your numbers would be better. And that's, I think, is contributing to it.
Okay, a topic we can talk much more about, but I want to get to at least one more thing if we can. Immigration. The White House now says the president will support these 2 proposed immigration bills that are working their way through the House. Debate is supposed to start next week. We see all this conflict really coming to an head because of these pictures of these young children separated from their parents. What do you expect to happen?
I expect that if Donald Trump gets on his desk a bill that includes significant wall funding, he will sign it. And my message to Democrats who want to cut this deal and have the visas that are currently going to chain migration not eliminated, which is what border security people want, but just transferred to others. If they want to see current levels of legal immigration stay about where they are, if they want that win, all they got to do is give Trump his money. If he gets to wall money, he will sign everybody, amnesty for everybody, if he can just have his wall. And that's the question is, will Democrats be smart enough to take that deal, or will they think, well, we'll just let the Republicans flounder, we'll let them shoot at each other, and that's in our short-term benefit for November?
And part of the bad blood on immigration right now is the president blaming Democrats for the pictures I mentioned of these young children separated from their parents. Help people understand the case the president's trying to make.
Well, the case is that when you cross the border illegally, the law says that is a crime and you can be treated like a criminal. In the past, the Obama administration made the decision not to treat people that way, but that is what the law allows. I think that's the magic word here. I'll also add something. I think I don't want to get into too deep in the weeds on how these kids are actually being treated. The folks at Center for Immigration Studies have done some work on this, and it's a little more nuanced than we've seen. But, if you're an American citizen and you go to jail for robbing a bank or shoplifting, whatever, your kids are separated from you. This is part of law enforcement. It's not a pretty part. But if you had all the people who've been busted for DWI who are being sent to jail, and you had their cameras and their kids all in the same place, you would see similar images. And I would say that one of the problems we have is that the language about immigration has gotten so far away from law enforcement, which is what the border security people want, and has gotten so much into the narratives of individuals that it's hard for people of goodwill to come together and say, look, what is just the smart policy to have? Every country in the world has borders that they're allowed to enforce. America is the only country where if you say, we just want to enforce the borders, you're called a hater or a xenophobe or that you hate children and want them dragged away from their parents.
Well,
Somewhere
Western Europe as well, you'll get called that.
That's true. That is true, too. Good. Thank you for correcting me on that.
Well, sorry to end on a correction. Let's end. I'm looking forward to your Monday column, which I genuinely look forward to. Michael Graham, have a great weekend.
Thank you.